You heard, the row begins when the cyclist gets angry as the driver continues straight at a junction next to Borough Tube Station, despite being in a left-hand filter lane. Now that, in a busy city such as London, and I'm sure busy cities and towns up and down the land, I'm not condoning it, but it happens all the time. It's not for cyclists to decide to enforce the law. As the driver and cyclist continue along the road, the pair trade insults and accusations before the row escalates on the side of the road. The cyclist is heard shouting, "Why the F did you pull in front of me, you so-and-so, you so-and-so and so-and-so?" The cyclist says, "What are you going to do, you effing so-and-so," before he attacks the Mercedes car. As you heard, the driver of that car, chauffeur, says, "Now you're in trouble, that is criminal damage." A police spokesman said an allegation by a 54-year-old man of common assault is being investigated, as yet no arrests. But this is what happens. It puts so many vehicles on the roads. This is what is going to happen, and this is what you see with this extraordinary escalation of cycle lanes. We all want cyclists to be safe, of course we do, but motorists need to get around as well. Hugh Bladon is one of the founding members of the Alliance of British Drivers. Do you have sympathy with the chauffeur here? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick, and congratulations on your increased audience.
That's very kind of you. Thank you, Mr. Bladon. Thank you.
What a shocking business this is. I hate this business of cyclists against motorists. We're all using the same roads, and we all have a duty of care to one another.
Yes.
I can quite see why motorists get aggravated with cyclists, and vice versa.
Yes.
Some cyclists just don't understand the rules of the road, and if they were to behave themselves in the way they're supposed to, then that would take some of the aggro out of the situation. But equally, I think some motorists don't take the care that they should do when they're passing cyclists and so on. So it's a two-way street in a way, but I personally would never get involved with a fight with cyclists. I have to give them plenty of room because I don't want my car to be damaged.
How are we to take the Sturm and Angst off the streets, off the roads?
Well, I think you got it in one when you introduced the thing, because it's the sheer number of people who are travelling. I mean, I'm happy. I don't have to cope with London, fortunately, but I can't imagine how awful it must be every morning to be driving to work, and there are just so many cars and buses and cyclists and God knows what else. It's bound to rack up the tension between everybody, and it's an awful situation. I don't know what you can do, because you can't build any more roads in London. Isn't that
the problem, lastly, Mr. Bladon? We can't build any more roads, so we want cyclists to cycle safely, but we have to afford motorists the possibility to get around town as well.
Well, that's absolutely right, and from what I've seen when I've been to London, which I occasionally, I'm afraid, have to do, a lot of the tarmac has been given over to cyclists excessively, in my view. So it's actually creating the congestion that many people complain about.
Hugh Bladon, thank you, and thank you for your kind words about the show. You're one of the founding members of the Alliance of British Drivers. Listening to that is Donnachadh McCarthy, who's co-founder of Stop Killing Cyclists. How would you comment on the behaviour of this cyclist in this instance, if you've had the opportunity to see the video on lbc.co.uk?
Yeah, good morning, Nick.
Morning.
Nobody condones criminal damage in any circumstance. What I would say is that this is a symptom of the fact that the roads haven't been designed to allow both drivers and cyclists to get by safely. Thankfully, such incidents now don't happen along the embankment where the fantastic new cycle highway has been installed.
Yes, and where journey times have tripled for motorised vehicles.
That's actually not true, Nick.
Well,
if you look at the stats from the City of London, there's only been 2 times where the amount of traffic has gone down radically. One was after the congestion charge was installed, went down 15%. And in the City of London, when the 2 cycle lanes were installed, traffic has gone down 15%.
When was the last time you tried to drive
traffic has gone down 15%.
When was the last time you tried to drive? No, you can't actually. When was the last time you had to drive from Westminster? No, you've had enough. When was the last time you had to drive from Westminster to Tower Bridge? When was the last time you had to drive a vehicle from Westminster to Tower Bridge?
You asked me a question about congestion.
OK, and now I'm asking you a question because I'm challenging your figures. When was the last time you drove a motorised vehicle from Westminster to Tower Bridge?
The facts from the City of London state that the cars in the City of London
I'll ask
down
a final
15%.
time, Mr. McCarthy. Could you please tell me when was the last time you drove or were in a motorised vehicle trying to make its way from the Houses of Parliament or Scotland Yard to Tower Bridge?
On that road, most of the cars are cabs.
No, they're not. When was the last time, for the 5th time, you were in a motorised vehicle trying to make your way from either Scotland Yard or the Houses of Parliament towards Tower Bridge?
I never take vehicles because they're dangerous and polluting.
What about those who do? What about those who don't have a choice? What about people who are making their living by doing deliveries for Amazon and other companies, ASOS?
Good point. Well, the economy in central London is suffering because there's too much traffic. So what do we do about too much traffic? We encourage them onto bikes, and we actually introduce congestion charge for cabs and minicabs, so that those people trying to make their living have clearer roads.
No. The people who are trying to make their living are those courier drivers who are trying to get those deliveries to offices where people order their clothing or whatever else it might be and their other goods, and that's delivered by courier, and they have no roads. You can't suddenly move to giving buses and taxis and vans and cars one lane, when meantime the cycle lanes, except in peak hours, you could fire a cannon through them and no one would get hurt.
Well, we're actually on the same side. I want the economy of central London to thrive. It won't thrive as long as people take excessive number of cars and excessive number of cabs.
No one drives for a pleasure, Mr. McCarthy.
Pardon?
No one drives in London for pleasure. No one thinks, what should we do on a Thursday morning? I tell you what, let's drive through central London. They do it because they have to, and that's how they earn their living.
What percentage of people in London do you think take their cars into central London every day?
97. Of all cars, do you mean?
What percentage of London?
I've no idea. And what does it matter? I'm worried about the people who do it for their living.
We have to analyse who is driving in central London and why. Is that
because
a fair question?
They have to. No one's driving for pleasure. Like this gentleman now, he's a professional chauffeur. He's not doing it because he just wants to have a day out from the wife. He's doing it because he makes his living like that.
He's chauffeuring chief executive who may be going 2 stops on the tube and using a chauffeur instead of using the tube, clogging up the roads for your courier.
Oh, for goodness sake, he can chauffeur whoever he likes, this man. What's it to do with you, who his passenger is?
What it has to do with me is that you're actually concerned about the conflict on the roads and the economy of London suffering. Do you care about the economy of central London?
Of course I can care about the economy of central London, which is being choked by these cycle superhighways. But I also care about the safety of cyclists. I'll leave it there. Donnachadh McCarthy is co-founder of Stop Killing Cyclists. Thank you for that. And I understand, and this isn't his name, but we're going to call him Gary, that you are the driver involved. You're on the radio. Good morning. What can you recall of those events? I know it's not your real name, but I've called you Gary. Morning to you.
Morning.
What do you recall of those events?
I've been reading from when all this story broke about I was in the wrong lane and everything else, and my colleagues who will be listening to this, I'm sure will be listening to this, we all share the road. I ride motorbikes. I've been doing my job for 33 years. I also ride a push bike as well. No matter what happened before or during, that is absolutely criminal damage. I was frightened by what was happening to me.
I'm sure.
By being poked in the face and intimidated. I'm not an anti-cyclist. We all have to share the road. But rules need to be made as regards to cyclists. This cannot continue. It cannot continue. Myself and my colleagues, and there are lots of us, we are having this every single day.
Well, not to this level of damage, Gary, it has to be said.
Some of it is.
Right.
Some of it is. The only good thing for me is it was recorded on my CCTV.
Yes, indeed.
That is the only good thing for me, because that cyclist, if I didn't have it, would be riding off in the yonders, and I would have had no proof it was him.
Let me ask you this. Not that it would warrant this treatment. Were you actually in a left-hand turn filter lane and you chose to go forward?
Yeah, and I'm glad you've asked me that, Nick, because I will explain that.
Go ahead.
The left-hand lane is to turn left, the middle lane is to go straight, and the right-hand lane is to turn right.
I get it.
There was a lorry turning right, going towards London Bridge.
I know what
and
you're doing.
he was taking both lanes, which lorries do.
Yeah.
So I'm a professional driver. Why will I sit behind a row of traffic with a lorry turning right? So I went down the inside lane, and when it was perfectly safe, and anyone who's seen the video can see it's perfectly safe, I was nowhere near the cyclist. The cyclist was 4 or 5 car lengths in front of me when I crossed the junction.
He was in front of you?
He was in front of me.
So he then slowed down, right?
He was about 4 or 5 car lengths in front of me. When I went to cross the junction, instead of turning left, I went straight.
He was 4 or 5 car lengths in front of me.
I see.
He was looking over his shoulder to have an argument with me before anything even happened. He actually went past me when I was stationary at the junction.
Right. You work for a professional firm. Don't tell me the name of the firm. Many of your colleagues have similar altercations with cyclists, do they?
On a regular, daily basis.
Had you seen that cyclist ever before?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
No. We don't look for the face of cyclists. We just look for cyclists. But it just cannot continue. It cannot continue in the way that it is, and they're unidentifiable.
Gary, I know it's not your name, but when you say it can't continue, what can't continue?
That they can remain on the road unidentifiable. Something needs to be done as regards to being able to identify a cyclist. I just had a bit
of a clash with the piece of road, and I can't remember what it's called, that would take you from Scotland Yard towards Tower Bridge. Is it Upper Thames Street or Lower Thames Street? I never remember.
Lower Thames or Upper Thames is both.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it both? That's why I get confused. What has the impact been of the cycle superhighway there for you, Gary, and other professional drivers?
For me personally, I don't use it unless it's really early in the morning or really late at night. But some of my colleagues that travel home and travel in that way said that it puts half an hour on their journey.
It looks very ugly. Were you frightened for your safety?
I was. I thought the best thing for me to do, because I was on my way to work and because the clients that I drive, I thought the best thing for me to do, and unless he actually touches me, which is what he did, by the way. I think another thing you can hear in the conversation when I first stopped, when he hit my car and I thought he damaged my car. I put my window down because he came beside me and he actually went to take a swipe at me. He actually went to punch me, and I had put my head back and the tip of his glove caught the tip of my nose.
Really? And then he picks his bicycle up and smacks it into the side of your vehicle?
Yeah, and if you noticed, the other gentleman that was standing there was just watching it. I went to shake his hand. He didn't want to get involved. And I was walking into my car. It was actually done and dusted. And I was walking to get into my car to carry on to do what I was doing. And he did what he did in front.
Yeah.
Just did it.
Yeah.
Just did it.
And the police are seeking him now, I understand.
The police are investigating.
OK. How long have you been on the roads?
Sorry?
How long have you been on the roads, did you say? How long have you been doing this for a job?
I've been doing my job for 33 years. I'm now 54 and I passed my driving test at 19. And I ride motorbikes and I have a push bike as well.
Safe driving to you. Thank you very much. I don't know what your real name is. Do update us as the police get involved. That's Gary, not his real name, who was at the heart of that story. We're late to the LBC News headlines. 9:18, Simon Conway.